play us off. Hi there. Welcome back. I'm really pleased to introduce today somebody who's going to put a face on a brewery that has, I think, intentionally really not had a face for its 6 years of existence. And that is Untitled Art, which is based in Wanakee, brewed at Octopi Brewing. And I'm pleased to welcome the guy who has written every recipe. We need to get clarification on this, but he's been the head brewer at Untitled Art since the start, and he has been the guy who has been bringing you all those amazing, crazy hype beers for 6 years. So, Sam, welcome to Badger Beer Hour.
What an introductory! Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, cool. Nothing I'd rather do with where are we at? Wednesday night.
Why Beer Wednesday? Yeah. All right. So, okay, tell us about tell us about your path to brewing and your path to Untitled Art. Let's start with the start.
Yeah. So, I grew up kind of in Wisconsin, as all people do in Wisconsin, and fall in love with beer. And then when I was in college, there was kind of like this awakening or enlightenment that beer can be more than just, Miller Lite, Coors Light, Milwaukee's Best, Ice House. I think we were drinking some of.
College will do that to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we didn't have any money, but it kind of was just like there's a whole nother world out here that we're not tapping into. Similar to like cheese, other people's opinions of cheese, and then how in depth Wisconsin can tell you about a 12-year aged, God knows what. So I was doing that. I think I was 18 at the time, and I started doing some home brewing. Wasn't very good at it at all. And then started at a brewery in Wisconsin, because you can brew when you're not 21. There's a little bit of a loophole. I don't know if it still exists. And I don't know if I'd recommend it. It's not like money was very good then. But then, I took a job out in Colorado for a brewery called Boulder Beer. And I worked my way up from the lowest of the low to kind of more or less running the brew house and in control of most of the brewers. Never got official status there, but that's what I did. And then one day I saw Octopi was hiring and decided to move back to Wisconsin.
And this is let's see. Well, how long were you at Boulder?
I was at Boulder Beer I was there for 6 years total, but I took a break in the half and I left, and then they said, we want you back. So,
okay. So, and then Untitled Art started in late 2016. Is that?
Our first batch of Juicy was in December 2016. So,
okay. And you went directly into the head brewer role. Is that? I mean, obviously,
yeah.
Untitled Art has some pretty talented brewing.
For sure.
Like with Isaac Shawaki, who's who's the Octopi principal owner, and then Levi Funk, who obviously with Funk Factory.
Yeah.
Those are the two kind of owners. So I mean, obviously some beer talent around you, but can you tell us about like stepping into that role at Untitled Art and kind of what it looked like from the ground floor of this now national brand?
Yeah, so when I originally accepted the job for Octopi, I think it was for like lead brewer or something. And then it was quickly apparent that like my talents were in recipe development and formulation. And so Isaac and Levi kind of approached me. They pulled me aside and they're like, hey, like, what would you say if we started a brewery and money was no option and you could make anything you wanted? It just has to be really, really good. And I was like, sounds like I'm dreaming. And they said, no, this is actually something we want to pursue. We think that at this time, Wisconsin was a little bit behind on the times. And you could see places in New England and California, Colorado, Florida, really bubbling up and making all these cool, exciting beers. And Wisconsin just wasn't. And they were like, I think there's a real chance to do something here and reflect well on Wisconsin. And so that's what they approached me with. And I said, let's go for it. And that was Juicy Batch 1. And now we're on God knows what, 250, I think now. So it's been a long
Uh,
ride.
yeah. Okay. So, tell us about like how that. I mean, did your background at Boulder kind of plug into that next phase at with Untitled Art and the obviously there's kind of a set of beers and kind of flavor profiles and stuff that they were going after there. What's kind of describe the kind of the continuity there
Yeah.
and or not?
So my kind of role at Boulder Beer was, and it was kind of funny too, very similar. Like originally just a shift brewer, and we were making Mojo and Hazen Infused all the time. And then I would stay and come in on weekends and pilot brew and just make small batch goof around stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and that's where I got the most joy. I think that's where a lot of brewers get the most joy.
Yeah.
Um, and the
So
beers were selling pretty well. And then we made a beer called Shake, which was, chocolate stout that was super chocolate forward. And at the time, they were kind of like, holy cow, this is very different. I don't even know how to sell this. And they put it up on the market, and it was really well received. And so that kind of trickled into padding my resume, I guess, for Untitled Art.
okay, yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, that beer was um certainly a kind of a preview of what Untitled Art became as far as like the deployment of chocolate, not just as
Hmm.
like I mean, there had been chocolate stouts, but those were like using like what they called chocolate malts, which was just
Yeah.
I mean, certainly there were some brewers that were using nibs and
Mhm.
but I think going for that kind of like actually sweet, I mean, still balanced, but sweet profile like you get from like a chocolate bar, or I mean, obviously the shake is a reference to, I believe it's a reference to like a milkshake, right?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I look back and think like, like the guy who invented the golden doodle, he's kind of like, what the hell have I done? Like, this is a monstrosity. And I think back, it's like, ooh, was that like on the forefront of the bastardization of beer as we know it? Um, but in the end, it's all about the liquid and the consumer, and people wanted something like that. So,
Okay. Well, it's interesting that you that you use the term bastardization of beer because I mean, Untitled Art has probably, I mean, I would say carried the torch for, culinary stuff in beer and pastries and the super fruited sours. I mean, and again, like as you mentioned, like Wisconsin was kind of behind the times, I think, or Wisconsin brewers were slower to embrace, I guess those styles would be a way to
sure.
put it. Um, and so it's not like these things did not exist before Untitled Art, but I mean, as far as like having a portfolio that is exclusively that stuff, I mean, it sounds like there's maybe a little dissonance with the way that you feel about that, or I can you just talk about like that body of work and how you relate to it as a brewer and a drinker.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not without my holistic, uh, ancient approaches. I find beauty in a very well crafted pilsner. But for me, it's kind of, I'm very like, what's new, what's exciting, how do we test this, push to the limits? And Untitled Art and my bosses embrace that, and they're kind of like, yeah, go ham. And when we first started out, it was more of a replication, a kind of following in people's waves. Like it was a copy of a New England style IPA. It was a copy of a Florida style um, Berliner Weiss or something,
Yeah.
or heavy stout. But then we quickly kind of caught up to, okay, now we're not copying anymore. Now we're with them pace for pace, and now we're, personally, I feel like we're kind of stepping up ahead now and taking on a leadership role in where beverages are and where beverages are going in terms of exploration, in terms of real raw scientific capacity. That's where the octopi part really takes in, because they have just beautiful equipment. I mean, the experience and technology there. I mean, there's 140 people on staff. Many of them have 5 to 10 years of beer experience. So you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years of brewing. And what's really cool is that they do all different kinds of styles. So they can take what they applied on Oktoberfest to what we want to do on something oak aged oatmeal stout and kind of we get to piecemeal everything together and take the best of both worlds, I think. So
What, how does one thing relate to the other thing? Because I think from a consumer perspective, like we see an Oktoberfest and it's very familiar and it's delicious, and it satisfies in a very specific way. And then like a like a marshmallow brownie stout or something. I don't know.
sure.
Sorry, I should have checked some recent
No,
releases for to be a little bit more specific. But I mean, how do those, and like, and they can both be really done really well, and I can enjoy them each, but they seem like they're in completely different universes. So what kind of crossover do you have there as far as expertise and kind of the in the making that where that all that experience and that knowledge translates over?
sure. So I guess I can give you kind of an example. There's these new yeasts that are coming out in Berkeley, a lot of thiolized yeast, a lot of preloaded fruit flavors, which we're kind of excited about experimenting with, and how can we use those to
Yeah,
express more fruit characteristic. And so we're taking and talking with the yeast corporation and then the brewers as well as what do we know about making hefeweizens or stuff like that. We're stressing the yeast out systematically due to temperature or low pitch rates or low oxygen or high oxygen. What is irritating the yeast do in a controlled environment, where if we were just Untitled Art, or if we were just left to our own devices, it would be unscientific, I think. And this way it's more precise. They can say, here's the data. Look what happened when we fermented at 55 degrees. Look what happened when we fermented at 72 degrees. Or even more minute than that, 70 to 72.
yeah,
And so that's kind of cool. And it's a huge weapon in our arsenal. And the side goes both ways. So we push Octopi out of their comfort zone to try beers that they won't make. And Octopi can accommodate and then says to other clients like, hey, guess what? We now know how to make an overfruited Berliner Weiss kettle sour, where before they would not have. So it's
yeah.
symbiotic relationship, I think.
Right. Oh boy, there's so much to work with here. I have so many questions. Okay.
Sure.
Let me start kind of just peeling off of what you just said there.
Mhm.
I mean, I think beer people, understand that Untitled Art is, has some shared DNA with Octopi.
Mhm.
But I mean, you just described Octopi as they, and like, can you just kind of describe how that working relationship is with your essentially, like, brewing, you're a contract client,
Mhm.
but also, I mean, I can't imagine that Isaac, calling shots on in both companies is not. I don't know. I'm not sure how that would
Yeah.
work.
And it's funny too, because it's dependent on the day, it's depending on who's asking, it's depending on how they want the question answered or how I do. But my boss has pretty much always been the same. It's always been Isaac and Levi together.
Okay.
There's times when Isaac puts his foot on the gas pedal, me being the gas pedal, or when Levi puts his foot on the gas pedal on me. And there's an ebb and flow to the company too, where if we need more of something, this person will drive harder, or we need more of this. But yeah, we all work in the same building. Before, when we were starting, that's when you talk about this layers. Yeah, we could talk for forever. Before, when we started, contract brewing was pretty dirty word, and people were shunning that concept in gypsy brewing. And that's one of the things that Isaac wanted to erode or kind of rewrite the framework of that. And so they put a lot of emphasis on expensive equipment and knowledgeable people and actually delivering what the requests are. And it's just worked out really well, I think. And that has helped Untitled Art to push farther too.
Yeah.
And so it's been a wild ride. And like, I see Isaac every day. I see Levi every day. The employees pretty much cohabitate. But yeah, it's been a wild
Okay.
ride, I
How,
think.
how many employees I mean, I understand you're not like but that's, I imagine you're in a kind of an executive-ish position. But
Mhm.
how many employees does Untitled Art have? You know?
Not very many. Um,
Okay.
since we have a lot of unique business structure. Um, so we don't have a large sales force. We obviously don't own a brewery, so we don't have any equipment. So there's very few niche jobs, and people who work there need to wear multiple hats. Um, I think it's fine to say, but there's around 10. There's not very many people that
Okay.
work.
Okay.
Um, Go ahead.
I wanted to spin back over to the beer stuff. And
Sure.
because you mentioned having like kind of leading the way on in these styles, and I guess like we should probably define like what that means. Like to me, Untitled Art is hazy milkshake IPAs, kind of leading very contemporary hop styles, and then uh, pastry stouts, lots of adjuncts, lots of vanilla, some barrel aging for sure, lots of kind of culinary ingredients and replicating uh,
Mm-hmm.
sweet
Desserts.
treats and stuff like that. And then there'd be the fruit and sour lines that you mentioned, like the Florida Vices, but
Yeah.
but also some milkshake stuff going on there, and
And
kind
we
of
make, and this would be interesting. We make a large seltzer line. Do you know anything about this?
yes,
Okay.
yes, of course, and
Yeah.
of course the NA line. I mean, this
Yeah.
time of year also. So let's jump over to that.
Sure.
Let's save that. But can you talk about, well, and maybe, well, although maybe the answer to that is it that the answer to this question is that. But you kind of mentioned like leading and innovation, and I mean, I I don't know. Like there has to be a terminal kind of velocity to the kind of combinations of all the different stuff that we're putting in beer. Um, but 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 I don't know, maybe not. Like I mean, is that what you mean by innovation, or kind of what is it about advancing the quality and the execution of those things? But go
Well,
ahead.
again, in the previous years, yes, it was very beer explorative. But over the past couple of years, it's been this turn of the tide where we don't Untitled Art no longer wants to identify itself as a brewery, and we're more kind of, and maybe this is a horrible fan base to say this to, but it is the truth. We're more trying to be a beverage company
Yeah.
now. And
Okay.
so we've looked into the Florida Seltzer line was, we were drinking or seeing that people were drinking these White Claws, these Trulies, which in our opinions were not worth their weight in money. We're like, got it. Why are people consuming these? Why don't people like use real fruit, real ingredients? And then a light bulb went off, and we're like, we're doing that. We're gonna make that, and we're gonna make them taste good. That was the inception of the Florida Seltzer. We've also pursued other avenues. We've pursued wine. We didn't really master that technique. We make a lot of CBD water, which has a cult following. We made some adaptogens. We just recently came out with a Delta 9 beverage.
Okay.
Um,
Is that
and
available in Wisconsin?
it is, yes.
Okay.
Wisconsin and Minnesota. And we're learning a lot. And I think that's what's kind of cool about working for Untitled Art is there's no rigidity and everything's very fluid. So we're kind of like a dog chasing cars, but it keeps it fun. And it's like, well, let's pursue Delta 9 because there might be a real opportunity here. Or same with non-alcoholic. That was a big thing too, is like, I was like, God, these non-alcoholic beers just taste like shit. Like, why can't someone make a good one? And we're like, you know what? Forget this. We're going to make a good one. And so we just drove hard and hit the textbooks and studied and experimented and tried. And we're like, all right, let's make a good NA. So we're not bound by beer. That's how we got our roots, and that's always
Yeah.
where our core is. But these new shiny objects are pretty interesting. I like to be challenged too. So, and whatever we learn there, we can come back and apply on later things too. Like, how do we get a mouth feel of a stout in a seltzer, or vice versa? How do we get a Christmas in a seltzer and carry it back to a beer? So,
Oh, that's really interesting stuff. Wow. Okay. So, um, and I guess like you're at the forefront of all this. Like there's not like a NA development kind of. I mean, okay, so how do you kind of channel that, your experience has been in beer? How do you kind of channel that into like all these other things? And like, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. How do you do your job? I guess.
I don't know. You get pretty good at what you do, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you apply principles, critical thinking, and just what will work. Once you, I think there's a lot of play over, someone who's a very sophisticated baker could easily jump over into cooking a nice entree. I think there's principles that apply to both.
Yeah.
That's not to say it's not without challenge. And unfortunately, in some of the NA industry specifically, that was very frustrating because I feel like it's really dark on my eye. There was no one to talk to. There was no book, no nothing, no. You couldn't ask anybody anything because no one knew what the hell we were doing. An Italian Pilsner NA or a juicy NA. There's probably like 5 people on the planet. And even those people weren't going to give us the answers we were looking for. So
Right.
we're just like, well, what's going on here? Why did the NA suck? How do we overcome this hurdle? Oh, okay. Let's think about it this way. And then practice that and say, oh, shit, that didn't work at all. Or be like, oh, we're getting close on something here. Uh-oh. I cannot hear you. I can't hear you. Oh, no.
Chris, can't hear you. What's up, Sam? How you doing?
Hey, how are you?
Chris?
Nice hat.
Jump in, jump out, or thank you.
I didn't get it in earlier.
Yeah, I don't know where Chris's line of no. I don't know where Chris's line of where he was going.
Sure.
But no.
I'll answer your question. You got any questions for me?
Chris, drop out and come back.
Okay, there.
Yes,
There
no, we got
That's
you.
great.
We got you.
I have these new earbuds, and when I touch, like as I touch my head all the time, sometimes I nick. And okay, anyway.
Is this
All right, where were we?
Is this Apple?
What's
Hello?
that?
I said, is this Apple?
No, this is just this is actually Sony.
Okay.
I'm too cheap.
Damn
I'm too cheap
Android.
for that. Okay. All right.
Right.
So when you mentioned that kind of in the selling point that money was no object, and that rings true for me because one of the reasons I don't drink a ton of Untitled Art beer or beverages, but beer specifically, is the price point. And
Sure.
there's a different model there. And I assume that really helps making like why do these seltzers suck? Well, because they're like $7 for a 6-pack, or but I mean, certainly you get what you pay for with this stuff. I mean, the quality and the flavor profile, the intensity, all that stuff ends up really following along. But I mean, I don't know. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how it gets to that point and where kind of where that comes from?
Yeah, I kind of have a unique position too in that I can see how much things are tabulating to start to cost us, and sometimes I'm let full. It used to be when we were first starting, it was pretty free range, and now it's like, all right, cool it with the vanilla beans here. Like let's get a little bit more intelligent about this. But yeah, we've always just put premium first, and we see that too. And in today's economy, and that we price ourselves pretty high, and I agree. Some of them are pretty expensive. You do get what you pay for. And so we try to make some alternatives to meet people halfway. And again, a 4-pack is a lot too. You take a giant leap when you buy, I don't exactly know how much a 4-pack of juice drops is. I'll say about $20. I remember I was just in Seattle not but a half a year ago. I went to a brewery, and I remember it was $32 for a 4-pack. I was like, dude, like, just give me a can. He's like, no way. I was like, who the hell would give you 30? I was like, oh, we do that. Oh my God. Like, And what Untitled Art has done and tried to do, and I believe successfully, is made a name for quality. So you're not going to come up with a goose egg on Untitled Art. We certainly have ones that really shine, and we have ones that don't shine as bright. But you more or less know what you're going to get, and you're not going to get a false representation of how much fruit's going to be in there, or some made up fluff where it's like, yeah, I guess this kind of tastes like brownies if you told me it was made with brownies. That's something that we've prided ourselves on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does, with whatever you want to call us, a recession or suppression, we have been seeing, like, unfortunately, some people can't get access to this. So how do we, meet them halfway, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, and part of that too is the model of like being, what is it? 25 states? Is that?
Yeah, I think it might be 25. I was going to say 23, but we'll go with 25.
Okay. So 20 some states, I mean, so very, very, very broad. And when you're in that many states, and well, shoot, do you know how many barrels Untitled Art made last year? I'm not sure if I know.
I do.
I mean, I know I do not know.
But
Can you tell us? You're not going to tell us. Okay.
No, right. I think we kind of like the position we're in. We're not too big. We're not too small. It's in as many markets as we can get it in. We certainly love the fact that people like hound us. Get it to here. Get it to see. I'll keep using Seattle. Like, please get it in Seattle. We kind of like that stuff. And then it's a new Glarus model. You can't get it everywhere, so it builds up a little bit of hype. But we don't want to block people out. That was the whole reason we started the brewery. Was like, these New England IPAs need to be made available. You can't just get them fresh from Boston. Like, this is bull crap. Like, so it's as available as it can be without us being too big, I think.
Okay. Gotcha. You mentioned, well, what's your favorite, what's the favorite beer that you've made?
I get asked that question a lot. And personally, I do like to jump around. I'm not a brand loyalist, so I like to make new. It keeps it very exciting for me. My days at Boulder Beer, I can't imagine working at a different brewery, making Sierra Nevada Pale Ale 4 times a day, every day, Monday through Friday for the past however many years. Mm-hmm. But like, stuff that's really near and dear to my heart, I bring up the cherry sour a la mode we did with Corporate Ladder. That was a step. And most of the beers that, when I get asked this question, most of the beers are beers that moved us a step up. And that was definitely one. That was a kettle sour that we put a lot of cinnamon in, and no one that I had interacted with had worked with cinnamon and how to deal with that. And that stuff wreaks havoc on yeast. It messes yeast up. It turns it like this crazy snotty stuff. And yeah, it's really wild.
So what was the solution there? What was the big step forward?
Well, just in using raw spices to begin with, and calibrating that and controlling when to pull the flavor on it and how to halt seeping that kind of cinnamon flavor out. And then we also did a beer with Drecker, which I talk about frequently, a mango coconut sticky rice. And that was really cool to talk to Mark Bjorn and Bjornstad, I think. And because he was equally as amplified. We were both excited to do something. We didn't know what. And he was saying, so, what I've found is that these dessert beers really benefit from going kettle sour. You would never think that, but the sourness adds an extra kind of, not quite umami, but a mouthfeel to it. And we tried it out, and surprise, surprise, he was right.
Awesome.
And obviously the non-alcoholic stuff I'm personally really proud of. I'm really happy that landed. So.
That's great. That's great. One of the things you mentioned in both the one thread through both of those things is collaborations, and Untitled Art is, like more than half of the beers are probably collab, right?
Yeah, we started out.
All of them at the beginning. Well, almost all.
And that's kind of how we got our namesake too, is because the beer business is so, man, this beer's really building up now in my chest. The liquid drinking, not the talking about. So to clarify, that's how we got our foot in the door. I think we were working a lot with Microphone and all these other companies, because Levi's very good friends with a lot of these companies, and it was a good way to utilize kind of hanging out with the boys and learning and co-benefiting. And then not that we don't do as many collabs now, but it hasn't been as frequent as we have. And simply we're just kind of running out of breweries to pick, I guess. So
you've hit all the good ones, huh? What about I guess what about like how does that work? Like take us inside the collaboration process, because I think people see that, you know, they'll see the logo on the beer and not really know, like, does this just mean that they're brewed it there, or like,
sure,
you know, you kind of email the recipe back and forth, or how does that work? I imagine a lot of them are different, but kind of maybe a typical one.
Yeah, and it's I'm glad you asked the question, because it's everything in between. So I mean, and it's even been eye-opening to myself personally that I've seen, like, we'll collaborate with someone and someone will say like, yep, here's our logo, and we're like, whoa, you know, we're trying to like find, so hopefully you're supposed to teach us something, you're supposed to make our IPAs taste a little bit fruitier because of a technique that we're not familiar with, and then hopefully we teach you how to ... I mean, I don't know, clean a tank or add cinnamon to a beer. And those are the most fun. So that's why I really like the Drecker part, because that was really a, like, you know, I use a lot of metaphors, and similar to a band, like I was playing an instrument and he was able to pick up the tune and play to challenge me, and we both kind of amplified each other. And then I'll remember that, because it was very refreshing too, because it was kind of like a, what do you want to make? I don't know, IPA. What do you want to make? This. And he's like, no, I want to make something good. I really want to focus. For the most part though, it'll just be a random brewery. We do a lot of beer events, and let's say Beer and Cheese is coming up this weekend. I'll just plug that. And I'll go get a beer at a random booth, and then perhaps I'll have a conversation with somebody, and it might be just friends, like, oh, you like mountain biking? I like mountain biking. Or, oh, hey, what do you think about adding kumquat to blah, blah, blah? And then that typically will progress, and it'll turn email, turn phone, turn conversation, turn come on over, let's hang out, to let's brew a beer together. Typically is how it goes. For us, I can't speak for everybody's collab everywhere. And since I've seen the full spectrum, I know that it can be anywhere in between too.
Yeah. Is that usually happening at Octopi, or is that?
Yeah, the brunt, you know, Levi's very good about this too. He will, most times when he goes out of state, it is to brew with another brewery. And it's kind of cool. And he'll go to other countries to do that too as well. So like Korea, Russia. I don't know if he's done anything in the UK. I have to look back at the archive. But yeah, most of them are done at Octopi, because that's our facility. You know, that's kind of where we brew. And that works out really well for the contract aspect too, is they can say, you know, I'll keep picking on Drecker. Say, yeah, Drecker, why don't you come out to Octopi and we'll brew a beer together? Oh, by the way, you know, this place contract brews in case you're at capacity. So it works out pretty well.
Right.
So.
Oh my God, Sam, so many things. Okay. Do you know how many beers you've made? How many beers Untitled Art has made?
You can ask me both. I know that Untitled Art is around 250 now, I think.
Okay. Does that include the seltzers and all the beverages? Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much all the single beverages, I guess.
Okay. So. Okay. Man,
Octopi, I think, has made 7 beers. So.
Okay.
Hop Rocket, Galaxy, S'more Stout, Belgian Candy Waffle, some other stuff I can't remember. So.
Okay. I guess that's all the questions I had. I don't know. I feel like I had so many that were just like stacked up in the middle of all that stuff. But anything that you want to add about your work with? What's okay? Oh, all right. 2-part question.
Tell me.
One is what's coming up for Untitled Art.
Whoa.
And second, this is actually 2 separate questions. So go ahead.
Okay.
I'm gonna hold that one.
Coming up, let's see. I can pop open the schedule right now and just
there you go.
Share all.
Go ahead, share your screen and just throw all that.
Yeah, I know.
Little charts and graphs.
Personally, I think the Delta 9 is something we're pretty excited about. So, and I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but it's an avenue that most of the employees who work for Untitled Art don't participate in, this THC beverage. But there is kind of a cool like social aspect to it. And we are, since the non-alcoholic stuff we're really happy about, we're looking more into, well, what are some other not alcohol based beverages? And, we don't want to ostracize anybody. And I think Untitled Art does a good job of that. We do like a lot of vegan, or we accommodate for most health concerns. Every now we'll do some gluten-free stuff. And this Delta 9 thing is for people who can't abide and just drink alcohol, but they don't want to be ostracized at a party because they're not drinking. So this is like potentially, and it'd be cool to timestamp this and then look back 3 years and be like, yeah, that turned into nothing, or be like, oh, that guy was speaking some of the true. Is that this could not replace beer, but it could replace a portion of just a social aspect of liquid drinking THC in a community, I think. And I personally, it's been out for just a couple months now, and I've seen it too. I'll bring it with my friends, and we'll always start with the Delta 9, and then we'll have like 2 beers, and you feel pretty good afterwards.
Oh my God. Beers after I mean, I'm not speaking out of school here, but
sure.
Like, yeah. Oh my God, everything tastes better.
Yeah. So you've read.
That second one is like, oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's not, it's a different kind of body buzz. And I don't consume a lot of alcohol. It's been a long time since I've been drunk, but it does add a vibe to it. And plus it just saves your liver. In the morning, you're just like, oh, I only drank 36 ounces of liquid, 24 of it was beer, but I felt like I drank 200 ounces of beer.
What is the Delta 9 dosage in one of those cans?
It's just 3 milligrams, so it's really small. Some people are making, and that's what we wanted to do too. We're not trying to get zooted or trying to get people messed up. Right. It's really low, and a non-THC consumer should feel the effects. We're finding out it's hitting everybody different, which is, I mean, it's uncharted territory to us too. We hired a personal scientist to kind of walk us through and talk us what is chemically going on and what our expectations can be. But that's that. And then, sorry, it went off on that's non-beer.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting stuff. So,
with a very special barrel-aged release coming out with Angry Chair, which we typically do once a year. That'll be Midnight Toffee. So if anyone had the old Midnight Toffee, they should be hopefully pretty excited about this guy.
And when is that?
So, well, it's all about timing. We want to release it for Valentine's Day, but it's like, are the barrels ready? I've been tasting the whiskey barrels every day. I definitely have had my fair share this morning of them. And I'm like, let's just give it another week. But that's been in whiskey barrels for 2 years now. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And is that a pastry? Is that a pastry?
Yeah, it'll be a monstrosity. It's 15% alcohol and just sugar to high hell.
Wow.
People like that, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So you mentioned that this is the beer that and Greg, I promise I'll wrap this up soon. You mentioned that this is a beer that you've made before, although obviously not 2 years in the barrel, but and this is one of my bugaboos as a beer writer who seeks like consistency and reliability and the ability to come back to something and tell people about it and have it not be gone in a week after the thing comes out is bringing things back. And one of my favorite beers that you guys have ever made is the Chocolate Shop Zanzibar ice cream stout. And I know that was one of the few beers that you guys have actually made and brought back. What is the philosophy kind of behind that? And I mean that meaning like not doing that generally. Coming back to beers that I remember the baklava. What was the baklava beer that you guys made?
Oh,
that was a few years ago now, I bet. But
Yeah, we did a babka stout.
Vodka stout. Okay, not all right.
We did a halva stout.
Halva, that's the one. Marble halva. Yeah,
Yeah, there it is.
that's the one I was thinking of with tahini. And it's just, I mean, so I mean, I understand like some of this stuff is like super weird, and but like I mean, but I imagine like there are some that are super successful that still don't come back. So can you talk a little bit about the philosophy behind that?
Yeah, and when we were first starting, it was kind of like like a Kansas Dust in the Wind kind of song reference there. That we're gonna make a timestamp of a piece of art, and it's only been created once, and when it's gone, it's gone. And that business model has treated us pretty well. Everybody seeks out these certain kinds of beers, and they know if you don't get it, it's gone. And I also enjoy that aspect too, because again, making the same beer over and over and over again belittles it a little bit. It's the same way I cook too. When I cook food, I don't really cook like an item, like I'll just say whatever, some random let me go chicken parmesan. I don't really cook like that. I just grab what's in the fridge and just make up some mixture and then be like, wow, that was really good. I didn't write down what that was. Shit. Well,
like the chili recipe is never the same every time. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I find that exciting. And I think for some of the stuff we do repeat, the Zanzibar, we so clearly made less than people wanted, and that surprised us as well. And so that's why we came back and made it again.
I love that beer. I love that.
But we do like to keep it like coveted and unique, and kind of that's the whole point. That's so people don't camp on this stuff. So like the juice drops, I'm drinking a juice drops Kiwi Waiti, like so people buy it and they split 4 amongst their friends, and then it's gone. And then you talk about it, you reminisce about it, and you're like, oh my God, that one was so good. And then you'll see juice drops Prickly Pear Strata come up and be like, oh, okay, well, it's different. Let's give this a shot. Let's see how this was.
Okay. So. All right. Anything else that you wanted to add? I think we got to wrap up. Where Greg's probably like in the back, just like, yeah, he's like, yeah, bring it.
No, I don't know. It's you're asking me. Hopefully I answered your questions.
All right. Yeah. I mean, that and more. This is the most I've heard about Untitled Art in like all of the previous 6 years combined into one. So, and I did interview Levi about it right at the beginning. So there we go. Sam, thank you so much for coming on and talking about Untitled Art. It was super, super interesting. And I will hopefully I'll see you around. We'll be in touch.
I'll be there for another.
Keep up the good work.
So thank you. Appreciate it.